Today's lesson is all about studying another piece of writing and looking at how the author achieved a certain effect on the reader. So we're going to pause on thinking as writers today, and we're going to kind of transition to being the readers. So we're going to go back to 13 and a half, also known as our dead bird story, and we're going to look at certain parts of the story and how the author achieves certain effects. So I'm going to pick out certain parts from the story that made me laugh, that made me feel a little off, that made me feel sad, whatever the case. And just like we annotated our text for the grand conversation, we're going to kind of mark up this text looking for those areas where we felt certain emotions or we felt certain things. So I don't necessarily need you to reread the entire story. It was posted as an announcement, so if you would like to reread it to refresh your memory, you certainly can. But just going to kind of skim and look for those places that I felt my first emotion. So if you remember, the first part of the story is about the girls hanging out after school, and they are walking to Ashley's house. And if you can see towards the bottom of the first page, the narrator first starts talking about what Ashley's house looks like. And we talked a few weeks ago about what we are supposed to infer from this description. Well, obviously, we're supposed to get the picture that Ashley is rich because she's got this giant mansion with the high ceilings, all the books in the library, the lobby that she kind of feels like when you walk into her house. I think the first moment that I feel something in the story is honestly this conversation right here. Ashley's talking about Sweet Pea, how she got this bird for her third birthday. And I think the first moment that I feel something in the story is when Ashley says, "This is my brother's room. Don't go there," she warned, indicating a closed door. "This is the bathroom. Do you have to go?" "No." "Okay. Tell me when you do." Um, I feel in this moment a little odd, quite honestly, because it's such a weird thing to say. And so I would mark up this text. Maybe I would just comment electronically. Maybe I would just make a note of it. But this is the first emotion that I feel in the story. Okay. You'll notice on session 14 in your Bend 3 document, I'm going to switch tabs, that your job today is to make note of the part of the text that we were affected by. So if I'm also filling out this document today, I would maybe just put under number 1, um, when Ashley makes the comment about the narrator telling her when she has to go to the bathroom. Okay, or maybe just put like page 2, bathroom talk, whatever. My author's intent. Okay, this is where it maybe gets a little trickier. This is where our analysis is really going to come into play. So, what was the effect on the reader? Well, if I'm being the reader today, this conversation, the fact that this part of the story exists, makes me feel a little strange, makes me feel a little odd. Okay. I need to move to the next level though. I need to think of not only is this how I felt as the reader, but here's what the author was intending. Did she want me to feel strange or a little like squirmy? If so, why? Okay. Obviously, one of the other things that we're supposed to infer in the story is that Ashley is just a little strange. Everything about her is a little strange. I think that kind of goes hand in hand with some of the other images or the other conversations that come up during the story, such as her, imagining that she can fly, and that kind of ties into the image at the very end of the story of her kind of like flying around on the front lawn. they're like teenage girls, so it's just kind of goes with this image that Ashley doesn't really seem to care what other people think. She kind of just does her own thing. And so I think that the author's intent is that this conversation exists in the story because the author wants the readers to think about the type of person that Ashley is. That she kind of just says things that pop into her mind. Maybe she doesn't really have a filter. Maybe she just thinks differently from normal girls her age. Okay. So that's what I'm looking for in this box, this author's intent and the effect on the reader. Okay. So for the first two columns here, we're really thinking as a reader. And now for the other two columns, we're going to think about this particular part of the text as a writer. So what exactly did the author do to make this happen? Rather than coming out and saying Ashley is weird, Ashley is an odd duckling, there are certain things that the author's doing in the story to make us feel that way. Okay. So if I go back to the story and look at this part that maybe makes me feel a little strange, there are some things that I might note as a writer. The first thing that I look at when I go back to the story are these dashes. Normally, when these are in writing, it's a way to symbolize or signify to the reader that someone is being cut off, that they haven't finished a complete thought before they've either switched to another sentence or another clause, or someone's interrupted them. So normally these dashes, as a writer, are supposed to signify that someone's being interrupted. So I notice that there's two kind of back to back in Ashley's talk. This is my brother's room, don't go there, she warned, indicating a closed door. This is the bathroom, do you have to go? No. Okay, tell me when you do. So if I go back to the chart that I'm supposed to be filling in, the author made this happen in a couple of ways. The first thing that I might note is that it's all conversation based. There's not a whole lot of internal thinking from the narrator's point of view. In fact, it's all just kind of detailing what Ashley is saying and doing. The only thing that the author or the narrator really does is say the simple word no. So I might note that this is a very short conversation, that the narrator doesn't participate much, and that Ashley really dominates the conversation. It also feels like she's jumping around from thought to thought. If you remember our lesson the other day, we talked about how the rhythm of sentences can have an effect. And I think this is a prime example of that. These are really short, jumpy sentences. These are really short, jumpy thoughts that almost like Ashley, again, doesn't have this filter. She's just kind of blurting things out. This is my brother's room. This is the bathroom. Do you have to go? Tell me when you do. These really short, simple sentences add to that flow of conversation where it's moving very quickly. So that might be a technique that I add here, how the author made this happen. The biggest thing that I want you to take away from today's lesson is this last column where you're going to experiment and try it in your own writing. So those moments where you want your readers, you want your audience to feel a certain way, and you're going to kind of mimic or copy how the author of 13 and a half had the same effect on her readers. Okay, so if we're sticking with my example here, a moment in your story where you want your readers to feel something about your character, maybe that they're a little strange, that they don't have a filter, that they just kind of say whatever pops into their mind. Okay, here's a place where I want you to experiment and show me how you're going to try that same technique in your own writing. So today you are going to go through 13 and a half. You're going to find a part of the text that you were affected by. So maybe it's a moment that you laughed or cried or you felt a little strange, whatever. I'm asking for 3 different parts of the story. Okay. In the second column, then, you are going to note what effect it had on you as the reader. Okay. For instance, I'm guessing a lot of you will pick when Ashley's mom comes clean and says that Sweet Pea was actually a series of birds. Okay. You might note that this is a sad part of the story. Okay. But I need you to move beyond just that base level thinking. I want you to really strive for that deeper analysis. So why did the author want you to feel that way? Why did they want you to feel sad? Why did they want you to feel uncomfortable? All right. And then in the next column, you're going to tell me how the author made it happen. Is it word choice? Is it how the conversation went? Is it that there's a conversation at all? Is it the fact that we're experiencing everything from the narrator's point of view, and she's constantly feeling uncomfortable? And then in this last column is where I want you to show me how you're going to achieve something similar in your own story. Okay. So today is all about kind of bouncing back and forth between being a reader and also being a writer, how we can achieve certain effects with our audience. So really focus on those high points of action, whether it's a happy or exciting moment, or maybe it's a sad, depressing moment. How are you going to achieve that feeling with your reader? Once you have 3 examples from 13 and a half, and you've experimented in your own writing, down here, same as always, you can work on editing your draft, showing me what explicitly you're changing today. Okay. If you go back to Google Classroom, you will see that there is also a document posted for your final draft. We are about a week out from our final due dates, so if you feel like you are ready to start really working on your final draft, you can take a peek at that document and make sure that your final draft, all of your final edits, all of your changes are going to be in that document. Don't copy things that are old. I don't want to see what was in your rough draft, right? These are your final edits. This is your final draft. So this is probably the most recent copy, the one with the most changes. That post on Google Classroom also contains the rubric and the introduction to the assignment, which was like the second day of school, where I talked about font and spacing, keeping in mind that this should all be consistent with those requirements. So make sure that you look at that. Hopefully this screencast was a little bit helpful. I apologize if it's kind of awkward. It's my first time doing it, but I wanted you to have a clear indication of what you are going to be working on today. Okay, so studying 13 and a half, finding 3 examples in the text of parts that you were affected by, and really reflecting on what the intent of the author was and how they made it happen, experimenting in your own writing, and then moving into editing your draft, maybe starting on your final draft. And the final 10 minutes of class today, you should also be completing the exit ticket that is posted on Google Classroom today. The agenda that I've also posted kind of lays this out. So if you want to see what you're working on today in writing, I've posted it there. But I'm hoping that the screencast kind of helped explain what exactly I'm looking for today's session. Anyone that tells me that they're done, I'm very skeptical of, but if you feel you are close, you may read your realistic fiction book today. There is also a printed copy of the article that we're going to be discussing on Thursday in our grand conversation. If you'd like to get a jump on that, you may also read that article. Okay. I should be available via chat and email, so let me know if you need anything from me today, but let's get a lot done. I'm going to be checking this document for everybody, so I should see lots in this chart, and I should see an edited draft down here. All right. Have a great day. Thanks, guys. Bye.